Hello and welcome to my presentation on memory impairment. My name is Madeline Campbell and I am an occupational therapy assistant student at St. Catherine University completing their online OTA program. So when I tell people that I'm going to school for occupational therapy or to become an OTA, they don't know what occupational therapy is and they don't understand what my job would be. So the occupational therapy practice framework defines occupational therapy as the therapeutic use of everyday life activities with individuals or groups for the purpose of enhancing or enabling participation in roles, habits, or routines in home, school, workplace, community, and other settings. Now, that's a really wordy definition. So what I like to tell people is that occupational therapy uses everyday life activities, so things that you do every day, and we use those to enhance your ability to perform them and even enable your ability to perform them. Basically, what occupational therapy does is we work with you to help you get back to doing the things that you love to do and the things that make you who you are. So with occupational therapy, we address a lot of different diseases, disorders, and deficits that anyone might experience. So we work with children, families, even to the end of life. And one of the things that we address is memory impairments. So when we talk about memory impairments, we want to look at two things: memory and cognition. So memory is the cognitive function that allows you to retain and recall information. So it's got two functions: to retain, so store memory, and recall, so to recall memories. There are a lot of different types of memory, but two of the most common are short-term and long-term memory. So short-term memory is what we are currently thinking about or what we're currently aware of in our environment. So what are you thinking right now? It could be anything from what you're going to have for dinner to did I forget to let the dogs out? That's short-term memory. So with short-term memory, the information is either forgotten or it's stored in long-term memory because you have deemed it important. So long-term memory is where information is stored, managed, and retrieved. These could be things like recipes, vacation memories, hopefully anniversaries, random facts you might have. These are all just things that your brain or you have deemed important, so it's being stored in your brain, and long-term memories are there for a lifetime normally. Individuals with a memory impairment will experience loss in short-term memory first before they lose long-term memory. So as I mentioned, memory is a cognitive function. Cognition is the process of understanding using experiences and senses. So memory is, like I mentioned, a cognitive function. So your cognition plays a huge role in your ability to remember. So cognition is further broken down into global mental functions and specific mental functions. Global mental functions are things like consciousness, orientation to time and place, personality, and energy. And specific mental functions are things like attention, memory, thought, judgment, and emotional regulation. Specific mental functions are impacted first in a memory impairment, just like short-term memory. So memory and cognition are extremely intricate, and they are interrelated, and they influence our ability to remember things. So for example, I had an experience a couple weeks ago in which my attention, which is a cognitive function, impacted my ability to remember things. So I was playing a game called Things with my friends, and if you know what Things is, you definitely know what amount of memory and attention is required to play this game, but most importantly, how to win the game. So Things is a game that you play with a group of people, and you're given a prompt, and they're all related to things. So a specific prompt that I remember is things that you wouldn't want to find in your sandwich. So everyone in the group submits an anonymous answer, and the key is you don't want the group to be able to trace your answer back to you. Once all the answers are submitted, a reader reads all of the answers, but you can't reread the answers and you can't personally look at the answers. So you have to remember everyone's answer that they submitted, because the goal of the game is to match answers with the individuals. So I found that if I was not paying attention, if I was having a side conversation with a friend, even though I was hearing the answers and my mind was processing it slightly, I could not remember any of the words. So it became my turn and I only knew one or two, and they might have already been matched, so I'm left with nothing. So that's just an example that I've experienced with how cognition, specifically attention, can affect your ability to remember. So although it is important to be aware of cognitive and memory changes, there are some common age-related problems that you might run into as you age. Not every change is an issue or indicates a memory impairment. So common age-related changes you might experience are difficulty finding a word, difficulty remembering a specific detail of a story, or even misplacing objects. But the key to common age-related problems is that you can eventually recall that information, or you can backtrack and retrace your steps to find the misplaced object. The line is drawn when memory deficits impact your ability to perform everyday life activities. These are things that you do every single day. So when that is impacted is when families start to worry, we as practitioners start to worry, and we will start implementing assessments and figuring out what's going on. So a comparison that I have here is Alzheimer's and common age-related issues. So with common age-related memory loss, you, like I said, can't remember a specific detail of a story. Eventually you might be able to recall it. Someone might help you and then you remember. But with Alzheimer's, you might forget the whole event. So last Halloween, you might forget what your grandchild dressed up as. But when you have Alzheimer's, you can't even remember last Halloween. It's all a blur. You might even be confused about the holiday itself. So that's when we start to perform assessments. So Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, and dementia is a permanent, progressive decline in intellectual function that interferes with an individual's normal activities. So 2 words I want to point out: permanent and progressive. There is no cure for dementia, and as time goes on, you progress through stages and it just gets more severe with time. Dementia is an umbrella term, meaning that it encompasses a bunch of different types. So dementia is just a general term, and then when we can identify the specific form is when you're diagnosed with the specific type of dementia. So first we have Alzheimer's, like I mentioned. This is the most common form of dementia. Vascular dementia is next. This is caused by a lack of blood flow to the brain, either caused by clots or deoxygenated blood. Lewy body dementia is the third most common. This is caused by Lewy body buildups, which is protein buildups on the nerve cells in the brain. Lastly, we have frontotemporal dementia. This is the least common form of dementia, but it is a group of brain disorders that affect the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. So your frontal lobe is in the front and your temporal lobes are on the side. So with any type of dementia, you may experience motor and perceptual deficits, so problems with movement and your perception, problems with executive functioning, self-control, focus, and thinking. So as I mentioned, this is a progressive disease, so there are stages. The stages can go into a lot more specific detail, but for the sake of this presentation, I just have the general progression of dementia. So mild is you're still independent. You may have lapses that affect your everyday activities. Misplacing objects is common, and you're beginning to withdraw. So withdrawal is a common symptom of dementia. This means that you are withdrawing socially, so not talking to friends as much anymore, or even family. You're just kind of isolating yourself. Next, we have moderate dementia. This, you need more assistance in everyday activities. It's harder for you to perform tasks, so not only do you need assistance because you might be forgetting to do tasks, but it's just hard for you to do the tasks themselves. There's increased confusion, significant personality and behavioral changes, and like I said, a need for more assistance, specifically in activities of daily living. So self-care activities like bathing, dressing, eating, different things like that. So the final stages are severe dementia. In these stages, completely dependent on others for care. You may even be living in a assisted facility, skilled nursing facility, something like that, so you can get the care that you need. There's a loss of communication, and like I said, full-time assistance is needed to care for individuals with severe dementia. So for the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease and how occupational therapy specifically can help individuals with Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is different than dementia, like I mentioned. Alzheimer's is a specific form of dementia, so it is considered a disease, whereas dementia is a general term to describe mental decline. So Alzheimer's is a slow, progressive deterioration of the brain that results in decreased cognitive abilities. The cause of Alzheimer's is unfortunately unknown. There's also no cure for Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's can happen to anyone, any gender, any culture, any ethnicity. The cause is unknown, so we can't pinpoint it to something specific. Symptoms of Alzheimer's are deficits in language and memory, disturbance in sense of time and place, personality changes, emotional instability, difficulty performing familiar tasks, and misplacing items. Again, with dementia, there are also stages of Alzheimer's. There are 7 stages. So with stages 1 through 3, the disease might go unknown. So 1, there's no cognitive decline, but 2 and 3 are very mild decline. So they may be identified as normal age-related memory loss. So they go unknown. But when we reach stage 4, that's when families really start to take notice. They're forgetting things they shouldn't be. So family starts to notice, they start to worry, and they may take the individual in to be tested around stage 4. Stage 5 is when we notice a need for more assistance. They may forget where they are. Again, just confusion. Stage 6 is when they begin forgetting important information. So this may be the name of their spouse or grandchildren or even their children. They might start having delusions and hallucinations, and they may even become more compulsive in this stage. So stage 7 is severe Alzheimer's. They need complete assistance and they've lost communication. They may even experience incontinence, so inability to control their bowel and bladder. So it is a common desire among all humans to be able to remain as independent as possible and care for themselves as long as possible. So occupational therapy helps people do that. And this is a common desire among even individuals with Alzheimer's or dementia or any disease, whatever it might be. Everybody wants this. So occupational therapists work with individuals with Alzheimer's to enhance their ability to function, to prolong that deterioration of memory. So we're going to look at what occupational therapy would look like when working with an individual with Alzheimer's. Occupational therapy work with their clients to help them live the best life that they can, help them be as safe as possible. This may be working on their independence, their ability to remain in their home, and their ability to continue doing the things they love despite their disorder, despite their disease. So with occupational therapy and Alzheimer's, we focus on 3 specific things. That is safety, social participation, and education and caregiver support. So safety, we are doing things like home evaluations, suggesting modifications to be made in the home, teaching them safer ways of doing things through energy conservation or just learning new skills, and also suggesting assistive devices. When we focus on safety, we really are just worried about the individual remaining in their home or whatever environment they're in, and we want them to be as safe as possible as they're moving around and also just be able to perform activities. But first, we want them to be able to perform those activities safely. Next, we might focus on social participation. Social participation is important for every human being. We are built to have meaningful connection with others. We are built to build relationships with people. So, as I mentioned, Alzheimer's, a symptom is withdrawal. So social participation is very difficult for them. They just want to isolate themselves. So it's too easy for them to do that. So we work on social participation, and we might do this through finding common interests between the individual and others in a facility or even individuals in their family. And we're going to create activities for them to do together, opportunities for them to socialize with one another and to really create that bond. With social participation as well, we're going to address behavioral issues. As I mentioned, Alzheimer's, as they progress, they may become more compulsive and they're just unable to control their emotions. So we work on helping the family regulate emotions as well as the individual, as long as they're able to regulate their own emotions, because that really influences their ability to engage with others and to participate socially. Lastly, we educate and provide caregiver support. So caregivers do such amazing work. They're superhumans. They need education. They need to know how to care for their loved ones effectively and safely. So we provide that education for them. We teach them transfers. We teach them proper body mechanics, things like that. But we also provide support for them. This could be through a group support or just one-on-one support. We provide them with resources, both for themselves as well as for their loved one. We provide stress management, tips for managing stress, and different things like that. So specific types of interventions you might see in occupational therapy are physical activities, caregiver groups, cognitive rehabilitation, and occupation-based activities. So physical interventions are essentially like exercise. We focus on building strength, balance, coordination, and endurance. And in change, this helps the individual perform ADLs and IADLs, so activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. These are things like bathing, strength to lift different equipment in the kitchen so they can cook, balance so that they can put their pant legs onto their feet. Different things like that. As we work on physical interventions, they in turn are able to perform those activities. Caregiver support, as I mentioned, we provide support groups for the caregivers. We may even do groups where caregivers and the care receiver are in the group. We could do interventions with them. They're highly focused on like mental health management for the caregiver, as well as education for how to care for their loved one. We have cognitive rehabilitation interventions. This is extremely important for individuals with Alzheimer's. Cognitive rehabilitation focuses on working the brain. So it could prevent decline or just prolong decline, not technically prevent, but prolong. And it helps them remember faces, names, things like that as they're exercising their brain in these activities. An example of a cognitive rehabilitation activity might be a Christmas craft. So as they're completing the craft, they're, working on fine motor skills, whatever it might be, but you're also engaging their mind. You're talking to them, asking them about last Christmas or maybe even their favorite Christmas. And this is helping them to remember different events in their lives, and in turn might remember a unfamiliar face, somebody they haven't been able to recognize lately. And cognitive rehabilitation is just really important for Alzheimer's. Even though they are experiencing decline, it's important to exercise their brain still. So lastly, we have occupation-based interventions. These are the most common interventions in occupational therapy. We're working on specific occupations. So dressing, bathing, eating, things like that. We're helping them to learn how to do these activities in a different way as they decline. And we're just working on their ability to perform them as independently as possible, but also learning how to use assistive devices to perform the activities. So these are all things that we can do in occupational therapy, but there are also things that you can do at home. So the first thing I have is don't be afraid to ask for help. Develop that skill of asking for help. It's the most important thing that you could learn to do for yourself. It's so beneficial. I definitely need to learn how to ask for help more, but it's such an important skill. I know that it takes away from independence, and it definitely takes a certain level of humility to ask for help in certain situations, but it is so important. You'll be safer and just better off all around if you learn how to ask for help. Second, I have stay mentally active. This could be through high-tech devices like iPads, DSs, different things like that. You're using technology to exercise your brain through apps that are mentally challenging. There's CogniFit is a good app, and BrainAge is another good one. And if you're not technically savvy, there are the classic puzzle books that you can do that have word searches, Sudoku, crossword puzzles, different things like that. Anything that challenges your brain to really think hard or just exercises it in any way, just really makes you think. Those are the things that you want to use to stay mentally active. AARP is a great resource. They have a program called Staying Sharp. They have resources for different brain games as well as memory training and helpful videos. So definitely check out AARP. They're just a great all-around resource for aging adults, but they have this program. I looked into it. It's really great. Lastly, I have used memory aids. Memory aids are a great way to jog your memory. So these could be things like calendars to remember appointments, sticky notes around your house to remember to take your pills, pill boxes to organize all of your pills so you don't have to pick them out of the containers, timers to remember that you're cooking and that something is done. Whatever it might be, there's a million different types of memory aids, but they're super helpful to just hold yourself accountable and just maintain that independence. So those are a few things that you can do yourself at home. We've learned about occupational therapy and how they can help Alzheimer's. I hope that this presentation was super helpful and informational. Thank you for listening.